If you had to picture Paris, you'd probably think of the Eiffel Tower. And you'd be right, it's our most famous monument. But what if I told you that this monument was supposed to be destroyed? Originally, the tower was supposed to be built for only 20 years, and through many hardships and 2 world wars, it survived today to be one of the most iconic monuments in the world. My name is Walid, I'm a born and raised Parisian and I've been working as a license guide for the past 10 years, and in this video I will share with you the history of the tower and its best secrets. Before diving into the history of the Eiffel Tower, we have to understand the political and historical context of the time. Since 1789, France went through different crises. We had 4 revolutions, 3 kings, 3 republics, 2 emperors. Those are a lot of changes throughout the 1800s. And if you add to that the defeat of 1870 against Germany and the loss of l'Alsace-Lorraine, it was a huge humiliation for France. So France wanted to take back its pride and to say to the world, we're still a great nation. The Third Republic at the time was fragile because you still had monarchists around, and France was the only democracy in Europe. So for a lot of countries, France was the weak man of Europe. So as 1889 was approaching, France had an opportunity to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the French Revolution and prove to the world that we still knew what we were doing. That's why in 1884 the French government decided to host the World's Fair of 1889. The World's Fair is a great occasion to showcase to the world your industrial prowess, your innovations, and also your economical power. If I had to compare it to something today, I would say it's a mix between the Olympic Games, CES, and Davos. So in 1886 they decided to officially open a design competition to build the tallest tower in the world. The idea was to use only French materials, it needed to have a square base of 125 meters and to be at least 300 meters high, which would have been at the time the tallest monument in the world. As 1889 was approaching, France had the opportunity to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the revolution and prove to the world that it was still an industrial power. During the competition, more than 107 projects were submitted, and some were crazy, such as this man who wanted to build a giant guillotine to celebrate the revolution. But it's the project of Gustave Eiffel that was picked because it was one of the most serious ones. Indeed, in the 1880s, Gustave Eiffel was already a highly respected engineer. He had been working on large projects across Europe, such as the Porto Bridge Maria Pia, but also on structures such as the high school I went to, which is le Lycée Carnot, where you have this metallic structure inside and that is now used during fashion shows. Eiffel also played a crucial role in the construction of the Statue of Liberty of New York by building the inside structure. He had also purchased a major industrial workshop in the suburbs of Paris, giving him an important manufacturing capacity. Thus, it made sense that Gustave Eiffel would be chosen to pursue this project. Except what you probably didn't know is that it wasn't originally his idea. 2 of his engineers from his company, Maurice Koechlin and Émile Nouguier, had drawn first sketches in 1884 because they were dreaming of sketching and building this 1,000-foot tower. I mean, imagine it was before skyscrapers were a thing, so engineers across the world were dreaming of building a really high structure. Gustave Eiffel at first was skeptical. He didn't necessarily like the project and didn't completely understand it, but he had another member of his team, Stephen Sauvestre, that redrew the sketch and softened it by adding arches and little design that finally made it look good. He transformed a raw engineering project into a monument. Eventually, Gustave Eiffel will be convinced of the idea, so much so that he will buy the patents from his engineers. He will then go around and try to build that project by offering it to several countries, including Spain and especially the town of Barcelona, except they found the project too costly, and thank God, because otherwise the Eiffel Tower would have been Spanish. Can you imagine? Gustave Eiffel will be convinced of the idea eventually, and he will launch several press campaigns in order to promote his tower. The French minister Édouard Lockroy will be convinced of the idea, and as he is in charge of planning the World's Fair, he will push for the project to happen. Once the idea was approved, you still had to finance it. And for Gustave Eiffel, it was a bet, because he knew that the government wasn't willing to pay for everything, nor was willing to pay even half of the cost. So he had to come up with 80% of the cost of the tower. The tower cost around 7.8 million francs, which would come up today to 35 to 45 million euros. So imagine, he had to borrow that money to private investors, but also to well-known banks such as le Crédit Industriel et Commercial, which still exists today, and la Société Générale. Leave in the comments if you believe that he will get his money back or not. Of course, Gustave Eiffel was a very smart businessman, and he knew that if he fronted 80% of the cost, well, he could get something in return. So what did he ask for? He asked for two things. First, to have the income from the ticket sale during the 20-year period, because you see, the Eiffel Tower was meant to only be built for 20 years, and after that it was meant to be dismantled. The second thing he asked for was to have an apartment on the top. It wasn't exactly quite an apartment, it was a lab, an office, but he had it and it was privately his. The prices to go up the tower were set as such: 2 francs for the first floor, 3 francs for the second floor, and 5 francs for the summit. And 5 francs at the time, well, it was a lot of money. It's today 25 to 35 euros. And he thought, well, with these prices, out of the 20-year period, he could probably turn a profit. But aside from the cost, the real challenge of the construction of the Eiffel Tower was the ground site itself and how to technically have it built. To build the Eiffel Tower, they chose a remote location that was called the Champ de Mars. Champ de Mars is a training field for the students of the military school, and it actually means the field of Mars. And so it's where they fired rifles, cannons, and they did all of their training. So it was an empty ground that had no purpose and was perfect to build the Eiffel Tower. Or so they thought. The proximity to the River Seine was practical to bring materials from the workshop in Levallois, but the ground proved to be unstable and they had to build compressed air caissons for the foundations of the tower, which wasn't really expected at first. Also, as the construction began, pressure mounted against the project. Artists such as Maupassant, Dumas, or Charles Garnier hated the project. They thought that the tower would be monstrous, the metal reminded them of the industry of the factories, and they preferred that the city would stay built out of stone. Édouard Lockroy made fun of them by saying, well, will you miss the sandy field of the Champ de Mars? I don't think so. So they went on with the project anyway, but they had to prove to the world that they were going to do it right, otherwise they would get so much criticism. Building the tower required a lot of materials. They had to bring from their workshops in Levallois 18,038 pieces of iron, 2.5 million rivets. Can you imagine they had to manufacture all of that and to be precise in the manufacturing, otherwise it wouldn't fit? The precision in the calculation also applied to the tower itself. They had to make sure that it was wind resistant, and Eiffel used to say that his tower was mostly composed of air rather than iron. And it was a novelty. They weren't sure how the tower would react, how such a tall building would react to the wind. And that's why you have so many holes, so many curves on the tower to make sure that it doesn't sway. The tower is so stable that even if you were to remove one of the pillars, it would still stand up. That's how of a marvel of engineering it is. In total, it's 7,300 tons of metal that were used for the tower, and they took into account that metal can expand with heat. And so the tower is actually 15 to 20 centimeters taller every summer. It also acts as a Faraday cage, meaning that when it gets struck by lightning, inside the people are safe, and that happens a couple of times a year, actually 5 or 6, and it causes no problem. About 300 workers were mobilized for the construction of the Eiffel Tower. Everything went smoothly because Eiffel thought of every single detail. He had a canteen on the spot so that workers wouldn't have to go up and down too much. He forbid alcohol consumption because he knew that it could lead to accidents, and that is why you had 0 accidents during the construction of the tower during working hours. So why do I specify working hours? Well, it's because you actually had one dead, but it happened after hours, so we don't really know if we count it. And if you compare it to buildings or monuments from that same period, well, if we take the Brooklyn Bridge, for instance, that's 27 deaths. The only issue that Eiffel had with his workers is that they went on strike 2 times. The first time, 1888, he knew that he had no other choice but to give them a raise, which he did. The second time, he knew that a second strike was coming, so he fired the leaders of the movement and gave a financial bonus to the others so that they wouldn't say anything. Finally, one of the greatest challenges of the Eiffel Tower was the elevators. Because Gustave Eiffel knew that if you didn't put elevators, you couldn't welcome millions of visitors. There's about 1,600 stairs to the top floor, and of course that wasn't viable to turn this tower into a monument. They couldn't rely yet on electricity as a source of power to pull the elevators up, and so instead they used a hydraulic system with hydraulic presses, and it was also at the time an engineering prowess. After 2 years and 2 months, the Eiffel Tower was built. Very short time, perfect construction, and it opened its doors to the public on the 6th of May, 1889. Before the Eiffel Tower, the tallest monument in the world was the Washington Monument with 169 meters. With the Eiffel Tower, we doubled the size. And in Europe, most of the tall buildings were cathedrals, churches, so it was the first monument that wasn't made for faith, but rather to show an industrial power. The Eiffel Tower remained the tallest structure in the world for 41 years and was only surpassed by the Chrysler Building in 1930. Today, to give you a comparison, Burj Al Khalifa is about 3 times the height of the Eiffel Tower. So during the inauguration of the tower, Gustave Eiffel will receive great honors. He will receive the medal that we call in France la Légion d'honneur, the highest medal that you can get. And people will embrace the Republic and see the power of the Third Republic. And so it's a success. And even financially, it's a success because the first year you will have 2 million visitors and Gustave Eiffel will break even in just 6 months. So the first year was already profitable. We all wish the story could have ended there, but the tower was meant to be built for only 20 years. And so the quick enthusiasm that you had at the beginning slowly declined. After the first year, you only had half the attendance the next year. And Eiffel, even though he did the first campaigns of paint, because you know it's iron, you have to protect it against the wind, against water, you have to take care of it, well, we first saw corrosion start to appear. And 1909 was looming quickly, and technically the city could reclaim the tower and have it destroyed. Gustave Eiffel didn't want his legacy to disappear, and he knew that he could take advantage of the novelty of having a 300-meter high tower to look into research and science. So the Eiffel Tower became a lab for experiments, meteorological experiments, aerodynamic, because being so high had advantages. We could test new ideas out. And there's one technology that saved the tower, it's the radio waves, because it's so high up that you could put an antenna on the top, which they did. And as they did that discovery, the military became very involved in that project, and so in 1910, a new concession was signed for 70 years this time. He made it, he has saved the Eiffel Tower. As the military took over the Eiffel Tower, they decided to build a bunker underground, right under the Eiffel Tower, and there is still proof that this bunker exists. If you come by the side of the Eiffel Tower, there's a chimney that sticks out. It was used for the heating system of the bunker. And the reason I can tell you this is because during our tours, we show these little details. So if you are interested in these tours, use the code Dayin10. You have a link in the description where you can go on our website and choose the tour you like, and you will have 10% off with this code. And the military was right. 1914 was just around the corner. And so the World War I started, and the Eiffel Tower played a big role in this war. During World War I, the Eiffel Tower's antenna will be used to intercept German communication, and it will give a lot of key elements to the French army so that they would know how close or far the enemy is from Paris and how many battalions are approaching. And that will play a crucial role in the Bataille de la Marne in 1914, where the French will be able to fight back the Germans and forbid them from getting close to Paris. The Eiffel Tower was nicknamed during World War I the Big Ear. After World War I, the Eiffel Tower will remain a hero in the heart of the French people. And Gustave Eiffel will pass away in 1923, proud of his creation, and the tower that used to be called the Tower of Mr. Eiffel will become forever the Eiffel Tower. In 1925, Fernand Jacopozzi, who wanted to do illuminations on the Eiffel Tower, thought why not find a brand that would want to promote its activity. So he went to see the car maker Citroën, but they turned him down. And later on he went to see Ford, who was maybe willing to accept it, but the French got back to him and said, well, wait, we are not letting an American company do it first, let us do it. And that's how the illuminations on the Eiffel Tower started, even though the modern form that we see everywhere dates back to the year 2000. During World War II, fortunately, the Eiffel Tower was not damaged or destroyed because Paris was captured very quickly. In 1940, Hitler came up to Paris to visit the city, and as he wanted to visit the Eiffel Tower, the workers at the Eiffel Tower had cut the cables of the elevator, and as I told you earlier, it was an American company that used to produce the elevator, and so the cables were made in America, and they couldn't replace it in a quick time, and so Hitler never visited the Eiffel Tower. The Wehrmacht used the tower for radio broadcasting, and in 1944 the Eiffel Tower was almost destroyed because Hitler had given the order to destroy the major monuments and bridges of the city of Paris, but the General von Scholtis refused to obey his order, and at the liberation they removed the Nazi flag that was floating on the Eiffel Tower and replaced it with a French one. After the war, the Eiffel Tower truly became the embodiment of Paris. Artists were inspired by her, and you have many representations of her by Chagall, Seurat, Delaunay. And it appeared in many movies such as James Bond, Mission Impossible, Inception. So it's really part of the culture of Paris, and when you think of it, you think of the Eiffel Tower. It was also used to do many spectacular stunts, such as in 1948, when a circus company wanted to bring an elephant on the first floor. He didn't take the elevator, he was brought up the stairs in order to promote their activity. In 1989, Philippe Petit walked on a tightrope from the Trocadéro all the way to the Eiffel Tower. And in 2010, Ty Chris jumped with rollerblades from the first floor of the Eiffel Tower. So you often have stunts like that because it's such an iconic monument. What about now? Well, the Eiffel Tower needs to be repainted every 7 years, and every 7 years we do change the color. So when I was a kid, it was almost like a green, and now it's more like a golden brown. To repaint it, they use 60 tons of paint, and it's about 50 workers that do that job over 18 months. It takes them a while because the tower doesn't close when they repaint it. They work bit by bit, little by little. It is the 20th campaign of repainting that is being done at the moment, and it's an impressive task because they had to remove the extra layers that had been added over time. They have to paint it all by hand, and it's the equivalent of 30 football fields because they can't use any machinery to do it, and so it takes them a long time. The tower is now owned by the city of Paris, and it's visited by about 6.7 million people every year, and that generates around 120 million euros. It is a lot of money, but the maintenance is very costly, plus they have a lot of staff at the tower, and so for instance, during the pandemic and the years that followed, the Eiffel Tower accumulated a lot of debt, and so that's why they have increased prices last year, and they will probably continue to increase prices over the years. She's the most photographed monument in the world with about 100,000 photos taken daily. Some try to replicate the Eiffel Tower. You have the example of the Tokyo Tower, which is clearly inspired by it. But the most outrageous example is probably the tower in Las Vegas, because they also rebuilt the Opéra Garnier and the Haussmannian buildings of Paris. The Eiffel Tower started in rough conditions and it was controversial. We went from building monuments out of stone to making them out of steel, but she paved the way for many skyscrapers around the world, and she created a new era of modernism and industrialism. She's now one of the most beloved and iconic monuments in the world, and I cannot tell you enough to come and see her in Paris because she's much more impressive in person. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Tell us in the comment whether the Eiffel Tower is your favorite monument or not in Paris. And like and subscribe if you want more content about the city. We are happy to share the love of our city with people and its history.